Okay.
And tell me, does this describe you? I mean, it describes me to a T. I was so astounded. They just need to put ill-tempered at the bottom. But we have great endurance. We're very self-reliant, daring. Somebody earlier said that O's were good leaders. That is absolutely true. Can anybody take a guess why we're good leaders? O's are very controlling and they have to win. So stubborn, same difference, yeah. But by nature, we're very controlling and we have to win. So it makes us good leaders because we will drive to the goal. They're using all of their senses all the time. And this goes back to the woolly mammoth days when you might have to engage in a personal challenge at any point with a tribesman or an animal, and you better be on your guard. You better know what's going on. So all of us O's have come forward with those that same sense. Now Griffin's an O too, and we'll be doing something, and I'll say, that is so irritating, that sound. If that sound doesn't stop soon, I'm going to have to get up and do something about it. He hasn't even heard the sound. But that's the O in me, using those senses to a point that doesn't make sense. That's the overthinking, right? I'd like to do away with some of that characteristic, but it just seems to be me, right? And so, innately optimistic, is that y'all?
Yeah.
Everybody in here is smiling? You think that'd be a good thing? My entire life, people have said to me, you are entirely too happy.
Yeah.
You could rationalize anything. You need to pay attention. You should be mad about this, you know. Come to find out, this is brain chemistry that causes these things. And I think that optimism is actually a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever Okay.
Yeah, my daughter at school, they tell her, you smile too much, you're weird.
Is she an O?
Yes.
She's an O?
She smiles all the time. She's always upbeat and happy. And
well, we're going to explain why that is. A very strong sense of self-preservation, again, going back to the woolly mammoth, because you better, you know, it's him or you, and you better come out of it the winner. Here are some examples of type O's, some very common ones. President Reagan.
He was an Aquarius too.
Maybe on the more negative side, maybe Gorbachev, Queen Elizabeth. But those are people who embody these same sets of characteristics. Now, everything I put up here has been positive. Let's look at the less positive aspect of our personality. Very quick to anger. We go into stress mode very easily, prone to depression. We're very pleasure, reward oriented. Anybody in here think they're a heat controlling? We must win no matter what the situation is. Prone to addictive behaviors. Is this anybody in here?
yeah.
Nobody admitting to it. Oh, you're admitting to it. Me too. Absolutely, me too. Monotony is punishment. I have said in the past on an airplane, I used to have to fly for work, if I have to sit more than about 4 hours, I'll start misbehaving.
I twitch.
Yeah, you twitch?
Well, if you learn to meditate, you're never bored.
I go to physical
Well,
therapy and
separate issue. That's a good coping
10
strategy.
minutes with
Yeah,
an
it's
ice
just
pack
what it
and I'm
is.
twitching the whole time.
Yeah.
And he says, be still.
For migraines, I had to do biofeedback, where they put you in a chair in a dark room, cover you with a napkin, put electrodes on your face, and the goal is to relax. Here I am playing a game with electrodes. I do this and make the ball on the computer screen fly off the top, and then I knew I had 1 minute to relax and bring it back down to normal. You know, can't even just sit. Do what you're supposed to.
What's the addictive behavior? Is that also like the food binging?
It could be anything that you do addictively. And we're going to talk about some of them in a minute. We're very emotional and we're moody. And I grew up with people telling me that's a bad thing. Don't be that way. Don't be moody. Don't be emotional. But it's actually chemically driven. So why do we have both those good characteristics and those bad characteristics? It's because O's build up a category of chemicals called catecholamines. That's your fight or flight response. The reason we build up and maintain that level of stress response is that we're deficient in another chemical called MAO. And it's the job of the MAO to get rid of those brain stimulant chemicals. Our bodies don't do that. So when we get mad at somebody says something we don't like, and almost before we can recognize we're going to get mad, we just are mad. And you stay. You find it hard. You're maybe shaking from adrenaline. Find it very hard to come back from that. Find it very hard to just shrug off, and you're saying to yourself, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Does it sound like any of you in certain circumstances? Well, that's why. From a brain chemistry.
When I was a kid, but not, I don't think I did.
That quickly, be fully utilized, ready to take down whatever. But in current society, where we're not presented with a personal challenge, a survival challenge every time we go out the door.
Now, when you drive, you are.
Well, and do you get mad in the car?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So those are those catecholamines. And catecholamines are actually adrenaline and noradrenaline, the two fight or flight hormones. And that's why when you're angry, you feel so cranked up.
Mm-hmm.
So today, that noradrenaline is converted to anxiety, panic attacks, inability to turn off, and usually poor sleep. So if you think back to something that really made you mad, you had a hard time getting over it, you maybe finally just decided, I'm just not going to think about that, couldn't go to sleep that night, you're turning it over and over in your head. This isn't a failure on your part, it's your brain chemistry. And for me, it was enlightening to know that I wasn't defective. I mean, I guess we are, but we're all defective in this way. So the brain chemistry of the O is dopamine dominant. So dopamine is the brain chemical that makes you optimistic. It's your happy hormone. It's why O's smile. It's why we're so engaging until you make us mad. And then we're angry. So when we're in this happy state, dopamine dominant, there's real emphasis on pleasure and reward and optimism. But when we're stressed, that dopamine converts instantaneously into noradrenaline, and we're now out of balance, chemically out of balance. I mentioned coffee here. Coffee drinkers in here?
Oh, I love my coffee.
Okay, well.
Organic.
I gave up coffee about 4 weeks ago. The first 2 weeks were terrible. And I hate to admit I feel better. The reason being, it's not the caffeine, it's the coffee itself, it's chemical. Coffee is a catecholamine. So when you take an O, who already can slip into fight or flight in an instant, and you tank them full of coffee, it keeps you in that elevated fight or flight response. So for those of you who are going into some sort of a stressful situation, maybe it's an interview, maybe it's a difficult meeting with a client, I mean, it could be anything, probably would be good to lay off the coffee because you're already on edge. The coffee just makes you more so. Go forward. So we talked about this neurochemical imbalance when the O is stressed. Kicks you into this reward deficiency syndrome, which leads to addictive behaviors. So those addictions can be sex, drugs, rock and roll, sugar, gambling, alcohol, graffiti, vandalism. Now some of you are probably even sitting here thinking, that sounds like fun. That's very O. You know, that naughty, I'm going to be naughty, that's very O. But I myself have engaged in food addictions, I mean, my whole life. And once you realize what's happening, hopefully it makes it a little easier to correct those things.
Really?
Exercise.
Is that what helps you with the sugar?
Exercise, yes, that fixes almost everything for the O. Because when the O is stressed, that stress is interpreted directly in the body. Any of you have friends who are A's and they're like, oh, whatever, or that makes me so mad, let's go shopping, right? They don't pay any attention to the stress. And the O almost has to say, I'm going to set my purse down, I'm going to run around the block, I'll be back in 5 minutes, because it fixes so many things. And that's why exercise is so important for the O, even more so than the other blood groups. And that exercise needs to be violent, almost like chasing down a woolly mammoth. So we talked about monotony being punishment. Sitting and doing nothing is very, very hard for an O, and will lead them into doing something they probably shouldn't be doing. Very quick to express anger during stress, and we talked about that. And so the book talked about people who have the thought that clubbing or hitting my opponent is so natural. That is so O. So this dopamine swing, this neuro imbalance, unfortunately, leaves O's open to these disorders: bipolar, depression, heart disease only if you're also a workaholic. Like diabetes, O's are not prone to heart disease. Of the 4 blood groups, they're the least likely to have a cardiovascular event, unless they're a type A, in which case, I guess it's on the table. Also prone to Parkinson's, schizophrenia, and substance abuse.